Hey guys, it's Marty and Austin back with the Mind Body broadcast. Today we're going to talk about training in contest prep and then maybe a little bit of post contest prep training, right after you compete, how should you go about training in that transition period.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's um, in general, like Marty and I talked about, I think that as you start a contest prep, it's obviously not a drastic change in training. If you're drastically changing your training, that's probably not the best way to go about it because the old adage, whatever built the muscle keeps the muscle type of thing.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm not really a big fan of changing everything right out of the gate, but we can talk about some little nuances as you go, and obviously as you get tired and as you get depleted and as you get potentially, dare I say, weaker.
Hmm.
Uh,
Oh, did you not allowed to?
yeah,
You're not allowed to say that on a bodybuilding podcast, Austin. Yeah.
you're gonna lose. Yeah, so I mean, me personally, I know that ideally, I think in my last prep, I did things a little bit differently, and I've done things a little bit differently in all the preps because essentially in a contest prep, you're trying to maintain as much muscle tissue as you can. I mean, that's really the goal. You go into the gym to still progress in some way,
Hmm.
but at the same time, you obviously have to be realistic. It's not unrealistic for people to progress and hit personal bests and stuff, well through prep, halfway through even because
Hmm. Good point. Good point. I like that.
I mean some people just start prep way out of shape and they
Hmm.
get feel better. I always call it their fighting weight when they get to that body fat where they actually feel really good. They're leaner than when they started, but they're not so lean that they have started to decline yet.
You got it. Yep.
So I mean, once you get through the initial phases of prep, I mean that it's very realistic that you could still progress in the gym. Workouts should be very good. But someone like myself, I'm not I'm not really coasting into prep. I'm still training hard and doing my off season meticulously beforehand. So realistically, it is really hard for me to hit a bunch of PRs through prep. It just doesn't. I mean, even in the off season, after you've been training 10 years or more, you're probably not going to walk in the gym and be hitting PRs all the time.
No, that's
Um,
exactly it. Exactly it. If you go in with the mentality that training is going to be changing dramatically, or it will even say drastically, then I think you've either been led a little bit astray or you've got caught up a little bit into, we'll call it the gym floor chat or something like that. Because I know the numerous people that I work with that have been long term clients or so, and then we will get their contest prep diet started, which whatever that means, we'll go into that later about like what would change. But so they will say official prep has begun. We'll say that, and then they'll go, oh well, where's the official prep workout? And that just
right,
does
right,
that just really kind of makes me giggle. And I'll be like, let's say their workout changed, we'll say 2 4 6 weeks ago, and I kind of have to remind them softly, go that is not, and I'll use exactly what you said, the whole what built the muscle, but then I'll say but that's also not a really good way to gauge if I nailed the prep diet or not, because as you know, and I'll give you the real statistics from some of the studies they did 15 years ago, is that if we change one thing, 90% of the time, not only will it happen, but we'll get 90% better feedback than if we change two things. And what was it doing the work? Like, for instance,
right,
let's say we were doing 4 days a week of a pretty, like an upper lower split, something pretty progressive or whatever. And then I take out X fats, X carbs, or I add in cardio, and then I change the training to 5 times a week. Then I can go. Then I don't know what's really giving the fat loss
right,
or lack of fat loss, right? So it's already
right.
convoluting my kind of first assessment there. So if the more things I can leave the same, especially if the program's been kicking ass for them, I don't need to
Right.
change the nutrition by any stretch.
No, and if you're having the end of your off season, if it's good and your training is productive and you go and you create a calorie deficit, you're not automatically going to get weaker or anything. It's like,
Exactly.
yeah, that training's still going to it's going to continue to be productive, unless mentally you just shut it down and that's another thing, and that topic for another day, but the whole idea of, oh, now I'm in contest prep, that should change nothing. That's the last thing you want in your head, whether it's for training or nutrition or you expect to feel a certain way. And I've seen it before. I'll get first or second update into prep, like, coach, my training it's just not as good. I'm like, why? Well, prep's really getting me. I'm like thinking we're like a week and a half in, and I'm like, we're 10 days in. Prep is not getting you at all. But yeah, so ideally, like you said, you can change one variable at a time, and typically that variable is going to be nutrition and maybe cardio. Probably not training initially.
Exactly. And I'll go even a little further in that, is that if you've been working with someone competent, shameless plug for Marty and Ashton, we've been working with us, then we will know, for instance, let's say you, for whatever reason, just really respond super well to minimal amounts of cardio added in. I might not even change the nutrition. I won't change the training. I'll just say, you know what, man, or lady, let's kick up the cardio by 2 sessions, and then the prep quote, I'll use air quotes again, it's started. So that's and that could be all it is, or maybe someone needs a little bit more drastic of a jump, and you do need to, we'll say, up the cardio and then somehow take out some food or something like that. So it's such a wild term, and I don't think anyone is going to define it perfectly entirely or be able to all encompass what that means in terms of making the switch to a contest prep, because as I'm sure you're well aware, there's nothing really that different about prep versus off season if you are in this sport to win shows, look better, get better. You're still prepping. People will associate, unfortunately, weighing their food or things as silly as that as not as prep, and then we'll say eyeballing or eating willy-nilly is not prep. It's like, well, and again, that goes back to what we talked about the last couple episodes about making sure that your off season is that, like, you are, we'll say, on the right path, in a sense that there's nothing really dramatically different other than maybe if your body is a little bit sensitive to dairy, we take it out because we don't want that to be a factor or things like that. But for you to make a big distinction, like you said, about, oh my gosh, it's prep. Like, I would almost like to see those same people do our own kind of double-blind study, those same people, us not say that we're making the definitive switch at, we'll say January 1st, we're going to start prep. If I would just not say that, say, you know what, I want to push prep a little bit later this year, and they go, oh, okay, but I do change everything to quote-unquote prep, to see if that same person that you just told me said, oh, those prep feels like just, it's already getting to me. And then you say, and then you don't tell them, you say, hey, how are those prep feels? What prep feels? Oh, I'd started your prep 2 weeks early. Just to see if it really, because I just like you wouldn't have brought it up, that there are people that do have that, will say, incorrect mentality of that they should, or that they're married to the idea of what prep is inside their head, or from what they've read online, or from what their cousin who did bikini 5 years ago did, or how they should feel. Because there is a little bit too much negative connotations around contest prep. And then, of course, I'll flip the switch and say there's too many people that view off season in the same way. Go, oh no, does this mean when I've got to get fat? Does this mean when I've got to be X, Y, and Z, as opposed to it being something of a productive time? Like, I bet you me and you could argue pretty darn good with like a PowerPoint and a whiteboard saying that off season is more important than pre-contest and should be treated with a little bit more extreme, especially in some areas, you know what I mean? If they get lazy with the training in both the pre-contest or the off-season, if you're lazy in the off-season, but then prep comes and that's the time to mentally and physically hammer it, you're not going to see what you think you're not going to see what you thought you might see during prep time if your off-season time was, we'll say, You know what? I'll start first saying I don't really care for the term off season, just for terms like a light switch
Yeah.
off. It's the same reason why when the guy that came up with the term cheat meal, he hates that he calls it cheat meal, because now people will associate it with adultery on your diet, and then before you know it, as you're already going, oh man, because it just does something psychologically to you, as opposed to calling it a spike meal, a free meal, and we just went over this last time, a refeed meal. So screw everybody up, right? So yeah, what do you think about that in terms of the seriousness of which should be divulged in between the athlete, and I'm not saying the general first time competitor, but the athlete that goes from prep to off season or off season to prep? What do you think they should be distinguishing between them?
Well, it's a couple points there. I want to kind of reiterate on, because I think that, well, let's see, two things really. When I see someone, let's say it's on Facebook or whatever, because everyone has to announce everything on Facebook, right?
Well, of course.
So they'll say, I just started my diet. Or
I like that one.
Okay,
I like that. Just started my diet. It's like, what have you been? Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Okay. So there's another, and the other one is really motivated. I'm ramping up my training, or something to that extent. And I'm thinking, because they started prep, of course, I'm thinking, wait, what?
Yep.
In both of those cases, I'm thinking, what were you doing? I mean, how? And you know what? It's no surprise that a lot of people just don't have productive off seasons. I mean, and there's plenty of people that they can half-ass willy-nilly things and they still progress, but that's obviously not giving them optimal, quote unquote, results. I mean, they're not going to get the most out of what they're doing. But yeah, anytime I see someone say, oh, I'm, super motivated, I just started prep, really kicking butt in the gym, my workouts are so much better, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, like, what? Why? Maybe I'm a weirdo, but I just don't see, and I see that, hey, they have a new goal and they're changing directions. So mentally that in itself can be acutely motivating, like in the in the short term. I get that. That makes sense. But at the same time, I think that, like we talked about, I think it's just too much of a mindset shift, and people expect things to be different, and they're not. They're really not. I mean, I don't know what I just started my diet means. I mean, to me, that means that they weren't doing anything before and they were just, being a slob. Or the same with training. Well, what were you doing? What were you doing before you transitioned into prep? Were you just guessing, or were you doing the pump workouts, or what were you doing?
Exactly.
And I know you've seen that too.
Oh, absolutely. When it comes down to the mental flip, even that far out of them, all of a sudden now they're in prep mode, we'll call it. Like, and what does that entail, not only to us, me and you, but what does that entail to them, the client? And I really kind of like to get them set up for that, especially the first timers that you are going to hear. And I'll go over a couple of those things that I've seen right now. Is you are going to hear the chatter, especially if you say you are now the first person in either your family or your friend circle that is starting, quote unquote, a prep. Now, it's getting to the point of nowadays, love that nowadays, that people for the most part have heard of bodybuilding show, fitness competition. They've heard it some way, somehow, and they probably have some kind of, at the minimum, minor, I'll go flat out and say, misconceptions behind that, as opposed to having correct assumptions and assertions about it. So therefore that can even shape your mentality too. So I like to ask people, what is your opinion on a contest prep, and what is your opinion on an off season in terms of mind frame or whatever? And of course you'll hear things that are nightmarish from the beginning, like right from the get-go. It's funny, I was just talking to one of my girls who finished a show 2 weeks ago, and I told her what I'd like to say to most people about being backstage, especially for the first time competitors. I said, just listen or ask questions to the other competitors on the show day or athletes meeting or something. Just listen, because you're going to get a much greater insight than anything I could just tell you, because now you're going to see these examples right in front of your face. And what I mean by those are, oh, I've been doing, backwards Stairmaster for like the last 4 weeks, because that's what does this. And I haven't seen a carb in, and then they just won't say anything because they haven't had a carb for so long. That's how mentally gone they are. Gone. And I've had that. That was an exact example where I had one of my girls ask another girl what her diet was like. And I did, because of course not trying, because by this, obviously, Austin, me and you were trying to steal some dietary tactics through our clients at the last friggin' second by asking other clients backstage. So, but she said, what's your carbohydrates like, or whatever? And the girl said, well, the last time was, and the girl kind of looked up and left as if it was in thought, but then I think she thought or forgot what the thought was about, let alone that my client was there. And I was like, see, this is a good learning curve for you to go, okay, it does get this bad, but it doesn't have to be. And like I try to ask the competitors, did you ever feel like this? And they go, no, or maybe yes, but it's just showing you that there does not have to be one specific, this is how you feel, or a couple even during prep or at this point. Like, you can feel good. Like, sometimes there are some people that don't have to kill themselves, that don't have to do this, that keep their, we'll say, wits about them. Now, obviously, bodybuilding and further, especially at the more elite levels, you are going to have to, the sacrifice is going to have to turn into suffering just for a bit to get to that kind of condition or whatever. But it doesn't need to be you feel like absolute horse shit from 12 weeks out on all the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially if you're freaking bikini. Like, seriously, come on.
Oh, and I mean, Austin, I'll flat out tell you, man, like, coming from a history of working with predominantly bikini when I first got started, just due to, but it's and I'm not putting bikini down, and I'm not putting bikini girls down, but I'm saying the amount of either improper coaching or the amount of I am competing for the wrong reasons is rampant. So I'm agreeing with you in a sense of, it's bikini. This is not anything that you should be loading for. Don't get me started on bikini girls loading or doing some kind of hard load. I'm like, what are you loading up? That's like saying I'm loading up a smart car to move. That doesn't make sense. There's no room to load. But just, they are not going to experience by any stretch the potential that a depleted 230-pound super heavy is going to experience. It's just not there.
Right. Of course not. And it shouldn't be. And that's not to say that some gals just metabolically aren't very blessed at all, and they have to, and they're still going to have to, quote unquote, suffer acutely. That's not to say that won't happen, because I mean, I prep. And it's the same with guys too. I mean, everyone's experience is going to be a little bit different. But yeah, as a whole, it's ridiculous that some people are. But it's the same thing, when you see some of these nutrition protocols and training protocols. It's no wonder that they feel like that. I mean, they'll, from 12 to 16 weeks out on through the show, I mean, they're sub 1,000 calories, and they're doing hour, 2 hours of cardio, and they're doing. And their training volume is often absurd.
Yeah, exactly. Absurd. Good.
Yeah. So it's, I don't know. Like we talked about, I think we talked about in one of the other episodes, in acute situation, short term, you can really throw the rule book out, because, you're not going to cause a lot of those negative adaptions really short term. So, if you have to I always say, do what you have to do. If it's, 3 weeks or whatever the time span is, do what you have to do.
Yep.
And that's okay, because typically you're going to be able to dig out of that hole relatively easily compared to destroying yourself for 16 weeks. So,
oh gosh, of course.
But as far as like going back to the training aspect of it, we got off track a little bit, but that was good.
But that's still, I still like that, and I wanted to go there because
Yeah,
like
yeah,
we're calling
for
it with
sure.
the mind. That is still what can happen to the mind during that training switches,
Yep.
anyways, right? So yeah, keep going there.
Yeah. So going back to the physical side of training. So let's say we've established that not much should change. The only time a lot would change is that if you just literally had no routine in the off season or whatever,
Right, right.
we're going to call it. If you had no routine, then you weren't in off season because you weren't doing anything
Mm-hmm.
productive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so at that point, yeah, everything's going to change. But let's say that the transition's pretty seamless. You didn't change training, but now you're halfway through prep. You're 2/3, 3/4 of the way through prep, and you're starting to run out of resources in the sense that calories are low. Training's getting really tough. Maybe you're still maintaining your weights on your compound lifts. You've maybe lost a few reps here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Cardio's ramped up. I say, yeah, calories were low. So what can you utilize training as another means of creating a deficit? So what do you think about that?
Perfect. I love that you said that because I'm going to add to that too, because you said calories are low, cardio is up, and I'm going to say reserve tanks are now getting low, aka
Right.
your stored body fat, right? And
Yeah.
that's now when I see these markers as in, yeah, they are leaner. For my men, this is definitely when we dip under 10, especially if they don't not used to hang around 10% body fat. For women, when they start getting like that sub 18, sub 17 percent body fat, that's when they're going to start noticing that, yeah, that you don't have that battery backup, we'll call it. So yeah, of course I've seen that. So then how do you get around that? Like I like to really think, especially from the training perspective, is do they have time, aka what is their work schedule? Because I've got a famous story of a dude that I used to train. He didn't compete, but it was close enough anyways, that he worked so much. I think it was something close to 12 to 14 hours. Like Alberta, as I talked about up here with the oil field stuff, we get really long days. It's almost like farming in a sense that
Right.
when there's
Yep.
work, you do it, and when there's not work,
Yep.
you use your savings type of thing, right? But dude would have to train inside of his garage. Paint cans were added for extra weight type of thing, and that was the only modality, was that time that we had. How can we make that be more of a caloric burn? And so that we then added in some of the metabolic stuff, even as a guy, right? And where I'm going with
Sure.
metabolic is, and I will go off on a side tangent here in a bit on the term plyometrics, but what you can do is now you can do some more supersetting in a sense where it's not going to be something magic. And I'll make this clear distinction right now. It's not going to be this something magic where all of a sudden now you do supersetting and it's quote unquote bringing out the details or any of that crazy crap that you hear that like, oh, well, this is a feathering exercise or, oh, this is a that. Like that stuff just really turns my crank in the opposite direction. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that squats will bring out your feathering, man. I think it's cool. Like, just not saying to take away leg extensions and stuff like that, but I'm saying that you definitely don't need, there's no shaping exercises. There's no prep exclusive exercises, so you can get rid of your marriage ideas to that stuff too, but you can just get a little bit more done in that time. But then for the training is that you also can't squash yourself into the ground in terms of recovery, in terms of that as well, because for some strange reason it can go up higher in a sense in terms of training volume, frequency, or whatever, even up to training every day potentially. I still like giving people like the one day a week off of, we'll say, weights, but it can go up as long as it's not dipping into recovery. So and that's what also gets a little bit more fancy with contest prep too, is that, as we just said, without the resources necessarily being there, we're not going to be able to go in and, let's say, blast out max sets of hack squat with front squat with we'll say
Right.
we'll
Yep.
say yeah we'll say Smith squats, then going into another type of leg press or something. No, you're not going to have that there. And as I know you're well aware, is that the body doesn't know what weight it's using. So so yes, that's not a cop out and say, okay, you're all right to go 2 plate on the leg press as opposed to your usual 8, but it will boil down a heck of a lot more inside of your head to get over it, that you will potentially, more than I won't say potentially, I'm going to say you are going to get weaker in some degree, or I have no idea what the heck you've done during your mental to be able to keep the exact same 4-plate squat from the beginning of prep to the end. Congratulations, you're that freak that I'm not talking to. But you get over it. You are going to get weaker, but definitely pick a different side of the knife in the sense of you're going to have to say, screw this, and I need to hold on to everything I've got in terms of strength, but then also in terms of intensity. Because getting down that about you not being able to hit that 4-plate squat, that is only going to cascade your brain into going, why am I even training? Whereas I love what you said at the beginning is what built the muscle was that training. So whenever you see these people that just now all of a sudden they're doing more training or whatever, I think, and you might be able to give me your opinion on this one too, is that when I see people adding in more volume to their training, I think that, let's say they just did the hour and a half now, whereas their off season was an hour. That hour and a half is just as, unfortunately, is just as productive as that hour now, because they have to do so much more just to get the same damn stimulus, because the intensity or the same weight isn't there, right? Like, let's say you did 1,000-pound squat. We'll just make up a ludicrous number, 1,000-pound squat, and that burns X calories. But now you're only doing 700-pound squats, and now they have to add something in just to get the same calorie burn. So now they're doing less intensive a workout, so that now that's how they think their training has to change, or they go, oh, they associate more training with more of the caloric burn. Of course, that's when you get the, now my reps need to jack up too, because that's what you do in a fat loss diet. You have to do more reps, which I'll definitely let you touch on that too. But yeah, I see that a little bit too much, that people are now thinking they need more volume of training because it's prep time, and that's what you do when you are more active in a sense. But that can be very led down the wrong path in a sense of, now that hour to the hour and a half, if the training is still sound training, now you've got less reserves. Now you're getting really beat up. Maybe the stimulants and the pre-workout, the stuff that you might be starting to abuse here and there, are masking a lot of the recovery problems, and then we can dip into some burnout way too early in the prep versus where it could be. What do you think about any of that?
Oh man, so there's a lot of points there. Okay. I do like, I can see it both ways, but
totally.
Yeah. So, but you made a really good point in saying that obviously calorically, if you're looking at just calorie expenditure in general, yeah, you're going to burn less, because think about the volume that you're actually doing. Even if you train for an hour and a half, part of volume is also the amount of weight, how many times it moves as in total reps, so add all that up. Let's say you move 10,000 pounds in this workout.
Right.
Well, you just got weaker. So now to move 10,000 pounds in your workout, it's going to take you longer, of course. So yeah, right. I mean, right there in and of itself, you're just burning less calories. I mean, and your NEAT for the day goes down.
Correct.
Because you don't even want to get up to go to the bathroom because you're tired. That's when I'm just tempted to bring one of those little hospital urinals to my bed.
Absolutely, the bedpans. That's right.
Just fucking sleep with a bedpan. But yeah, so that's definitely something to consider. I think at that point, see, now this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because now you're balancing, okay, how can I maintain my training enough that I'm not going to lose a lot of tissue. And I think muscle loss is, in general, it's probably overstated a little bit.
Just a bit. I think I'll add to you wherever you keep going. I think that mentally people set themselves up to think, oh, I have to lose muscle or I'm going to. So almost, what's the point? Is that, you see something like that too, or?
Yeah, and I see it both ways. Like they get afraid to lose muscle, so they just honestly don't get lean enough. But that's normally more of a calorie thing. They won't go hard enough nutritionally.
Correct.
But with the training, you mentioned too, not getting weak in a prep. Outside of the top 5% genetics that they just don't get weaker, if you don't get at least a little bit weaker in the prep, you better look in the mirror again and make sure you're lean enough. I'm telling you, because if I have yet to train, except for just a very select few people that don't lose strength in prep, that are actually in true stage condition, especially when we're talking, the more conditioned classes, women's physique, men's bodybuilding, men's classic physique, even physique, men's physique in general, maybe even figure. So in reality, if that's a concern to you, you're probably going to completely shut yourself down mentally and not get lean enough anyhow. I mean, so you're going to have to accept that to an extent. But so where, from there, let's say, because I'm trying to do scenarios here, because
Sure.
we'll put some context to it. So we are at that point, and you mentioned metabolic work.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So now we have to think, now you're getting in a situation where your nervous system is pretty taxed. So how can we keep burning calories with, we have basically three ways we can do it. We have training, we have, nutrition, we can create a deficit that way. And then we have cardio. So, where you take away and where you create a deficit at that point, it's going to kind of just depend on, you mentioned schedule. That's a really good one. Because obviously, hey, if realistically somebody might not just be able to do 2.5 hours of steady state cardio a day, it just might not be plausible.
Yep.
So, can we create more in training? Potentially. Can we create more through cardio? Potentially. This is where stuff that's going to create a bigger epoch effect.
Right. Right.
You mentioned supersets. Sure, that's a great one. But at the same time, what we have to realize is you don't just want to completely change all your training to doing giant sets.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, if you're 2 weeks out and you're feeling like complete ass, and you're afraid of injuring yourself, I'll probably don't even care at that point. That's okay. Not going to lose tissue in 13 days or whatever.
Right.
It'll lead up to before the show. But if we're still 6 weeks out or something, I personally would like to see the person at least leave in one or so compound movements that they're still gonna get a heavy weight on their back or in their hand relative to their,
of course, yeah,
relative to what they feel like. So if they're training back, they might still do a rack pull.
Yeah.
They might still do a barbell row or a pin lay row or something like that, where they're not hitting any PRs, but they're still having that response, that neural response from having that heavy weight in their hands. That's a great way to at least preserve tissue. Tell the muscle, hey, we still need you. Don't go anywhere. And then get on with your metabolic work afterwards.
Yes, absolutely. I love that you said Pendlay row, because I don't hear that enough, and I love that row. Glenn Pendlay's row is awesome, right? Yeah.
I think they're great.
So I wrote down, I got quite a bit of stuff here now. So for what can we do for metabolic work? So anyone that knows me knows I've got this friggin' ass backwards, we'll say, mantra for plyometrics. So plyometrics, what they actually are, and people are going to have to go digging for this. And I'm a term guy, so it's just like when you hear stiff-legged deadlift versus Romanian deadlift, I'm like, those are in fact two different exercises. I'm not going to get into it. It's a problem I have. It's not your problem, people. It's a problem that I have. But plyometrics were extremely slow, controlled training that was done with your body weight. Not this, I don't even know where the line started being blurred to this jumping, erratic, sporadic, dynamic, hopping over benches stuff came from, and that basically, we'll call them glorified boot camp training turned into plyometrics. It's not plyometrics, ladies. I don't know who's been telling it to you, and they've been also fooled too. But it was something like, as in, take 8 seconds on the squat and go down, almost like a Tai Chi thing. Come down for 8 seconds, go up for 8 seconds, and it was in the same, we'll say, sumo squat or something. That was what plyometrics are and were. And most people don't know that. So when we say, oh, let's add in some plyos, or what drives me crazy is that the people that are being told that the plyos are now going to be the thing that is burning the fat off of that specific area. So, like, let's say you have a heavier figure girl, and she was told to do this many plyos because that's going to burn the fat off of her legs. I will say, I am not going to say, and this, I might get shot for saying this, I am going to say that there is some minor validity to enhancing fat burning. Why? Only due to blood flow. Because if you girls' legs, most girls, I call it female pattern fatness, you got fat on your ass and your thighs, inner thighs, keeping the blood there can be helping this. But what also keeps the blood there is any kind of cardio. So no, there's not going to be no magic enhanced version of these plyometrics. You doing upward jumping jacks, burpees, stepping off and on a bench as fast as you can. And then, like, I love that you talked about the CNS, is that if you really give it during some of these plyos things, that's going to be just as taxing on your CNS as, let's say, a heavy set of squats, especially if I tell you I want 25 burpees done with 25 mountain climbers, done with 25 single leg lunges, done with 25 bodyweight squats, and you do that, that is going to send your brain for a loop. It really is. Maybe not the same as like a 5 set of 5 really heavy squats, but that's still not fluffy enough that it's low steady state cardio. You are still now again beating the crap out of your CNS. So that's something you got to watch for. So what would I do for metabolic training would be something like a superset, or something like a guided, in a sense, circuit, like as in maybe you pick a weight that's really damn light for you, and you do 10 overhead presses, then you do 10 curls, then you do 10 push-ups off of it, then you do 10 rows with it. That it's something that it's definitely not a weight workout, but it's definitely not a steady state cardio either. And
Right.
and not only that, but now if you give that something like that once, twice, 3 times a week, if you go to most general bodybuilders / whatever, anyone in our kind of realm, and say, do you like doing cardio or do you like working out more? And where are the hands going to raise? Working out. So then they can do that as more of a workout as opposed to cardio. Well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to have them on board doing that a little bit, as opposed to going, oh man, it's more of the treadmill. So that's something you can employ. No, but obviously abs. Abs is a really great friggin' way to add in some more epoch, to add in more quote-unquote training, because I'm a big fan of training abs in the off-season. I don't know about you. I've seen more downfalls from it, like in terms of people not training their abs. I just seen it between stomach distension, not having control over transverse abs, but even cosmetics. Why wouldn't you train them when you've got a lot of food in you? But regardless, so now the time has come. People are finally, training their abs now. But that's an easy, because even adding in something like, I don't know, let's say a 10 to 15 minute circuit, we do that 5 times a week. What does that add up to? That's quite a bit of extra volume there. And now we get the added bonus of finally getting the ab work in there. What else do I got here? 1 second. We got, oh yes, the recovery is worse now during prep. And then this is like, I can't get over this, where, so now recovery is worse. Now let's say we'll pick up the volume of the training, but so to go a little bit too ludicrous into that, why on earth, when in off season you were doing X amount for workouts that you were recovering with fine, sleeping fine, but now when sleep might not be the best, dietary food caloric intake coming from the diet is a little bit lower, people got to be asked, why do you think now you should do more training in a sense of from the recovery aspect? Because then people will be tired. Of course you'll be tired, but now we'll call it compound interest. You're wearing a stovepipe hat on top that is also now taking the ceiling away from you, because you are so tired from not recovering from the workouts.
Yep.
So there has to be a blended kind of approach to that, that if you are taking away from food, whether it's, even if it is protein, or you're putting protein up, or you're putting carbs down, fats down, that has to be there too. Like if strength takes a walloping jump for the negative, let's say you were doing 3-plate squat, and then 1 week you're already down to, I want to say 2 plates. Well, let's make it outlandish. You go down to a 2-plate squat in a matter of a week. Whoa, okay. Now my food reduction is crushing you in the wrong way, because that just taking food away to take food away, now we're not getting that caloric burn from the workout. Now we definitely aren't getting the same kind of muscular stimulus. So that's the fine line we have to watch with the training, is it now counterproductive to your fat loss? So now we are going to dip pretty hard into muscle loss. Then, like you said, it is overstated, but it also is very real in a sense of, if you don't watch that, because I know coaches that won't necessarily ask about strength, or will just say do the workouts, and they aren't seeing that their client's strength is going down by half or something ludicrous. Well, then there's no way that we're getting the same amount of retention that we could if the calories were higher and the training was better. Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's so basically the long and the short of it is you have to figure out what's going to give you the most bang for your buck without completely burying yourself. Or what's going to, because some things are going to do more harm than good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So and it gets tricky, because you're going to have, your CNS is going to be pretty much toast by the time you get done with prep. That's going to happen regardless. Your strength's probably not going to be that good. All those things are going to downregulate. So now you have to figure out, okay, how can I keep expending calories and not, make it minimal.
Right.
So, I liked a lot of the stuff that you mentioned in there. There's a couple other little things that I'll do too with people, is you mentioned basically using, you mentioned supersets, but we'll say circuits, things like that.
Sure.
Where
yep.
you're doing.
Yep.
That is also good, because you have to understand that if you just do, let's say I'm having someone do a pretty good amount of HIIT cardio on top of steady state, how are their legs going to recover? Like, we all have
Thank you.
people that have prepped and done a ton of cardio. They know that it just gets literally like you're just carrying concrete slabs around. So now you have to think, okay, I'm probably making my legs look worse because they're so inflamed.
Oh gosh, absolutely.
Right. And we know that obviously we can get some of that inflammation and stuff out once we get to the final week or whatever. But beyond that point, I want my tissue to be able to recover. Like, I don't want my legs to never recover in like an 8-week span, to never fully recover. That's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
So you have things like your circuits. You can do those. Maybe some upper body that has more upper body focus. Battle ropes is a good one.
So I'm gonna pause you right there. Just note how he said that, like, you can do upper body. Where the hard on has come from, that circuits or fat loss workouts, we'll call them, has to be leg oriented. That is insane. Like, you can do upper body circuits that get a burn. You can do, like he just said, battle ropes. So I just really want to hammer home that you do not have to do some kind of wacky low body plyometrics for every single frigging one of your circuits, which will be definitely detrimental to men, to have that be your cardio. Like, as in, no, you can do something that's upper body. Okay, perfect. Keep going. So you said battle ropes.
Yeah, so it could be something like battle ropes. It could be a circuit of multiple things. One thing that I'll add to training once in a while is, I'll just call them metabolic circuits, or whatever you want to call them. Essentially, the goal is kind of similar to HIIT. We're producing an EPOC effect. We're trying to raise the metabolism temporarily, burn more calories after the fact, because most people know, hey, HIIT cardio, it's pretty short, it's pretty intense. You're not burning, hundreds and hundreds of calories during it. You're going to have a little bit more of an after effect, quote unquote, just like training, just like weight training. So that's where, hey, I just, their person's telling me my legs are just totally toast. It's hurting their weight training. Their actual weight training that's helping them maintain muscle tissue
Absolutely.
is suffering so badly because of all the demand on their legs outside of that. So I'm thinking, okay, we need to switch to some kind of upper body focused circuit, use battle ropes, something along a rower. I mean, hell, you can use,
Yeah.
you can use a rower for that matter. And the thing is, people they don't think outside of the box like that. They think just because it's kind of a weird, it might be a little, I mean, I've done some strange stuff with people in circuits, like just to basically be able to get them through.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm thinking, hey, what muscle group is recovering the best? What is it? Okay, they're like, well, my back's doing pretty decent, and my shoulders feel okay. I'm like, okay, so we're gonna do rower and battle ropes. That's what we're gonna do right there, and that'll be your hit because your legs are just done.
And going even further with that, let's say it's a dude who you use your exact example that legs are fried, shoulders, back feel good. Let's say shoulders and back were an overpowering body part. Well, now let's beat the crap out of them, especially A, they're strong, B, they're fresh, and the legs are weak. The legs aren't going to be able to handle as much because not only, let's say we at a Focus, we were smart coaches because we're Marty and Austin, and we built the crap out of their legs. We don't want that tissue to be the first thing to go away. So take the genetically dominant body parts or the showcase, make them do all the work. Now the legs can either stick around or just do their job and go home and eat in a sense. Because I love that. Because what I'll do too, what I've been putting into the end of some of the workouts, I call them the megas or something along those lines. Of course they do. Of course I'm branding it like that, right? But for instance, let's say they do their chest workout, then they'll have the mega back blast, which is something like a lighter dumbbell row into a lighter cable pullover into a double, we'll say, band pull or something where it's like a back circuit, and then on back day they will have something like a leg circuit, so that it's kind of rotational in that sense, so that when the one is doing the hypertrophy work, we'll call it, then the other one could be doing the circuit capillary / cardio work and go from there. And then obviously I'll pay attention if someone says, okay, I'm not even getting close to the pump, the burn, the caloric expenditure, the sweat on the back days versus the legs because they aren't giving the same amount of effort or energy, so that I can kind of adjust to that. But just going back to like what you said is that if they have a body part that can handle and tolerate more of a beating up even in prep, use that to your advantage too. Like think of it like a kitchen. If you are in a figurative kitchen and you've got non-perishables and you got different types of soup and you got tons of tomato soup, eat the damn tomato soup so you don't go bored for first off, but you've got a lot of it while the other stuff gets restocked. So definitely look into that too. I like to I thought of this is that there's mindset, of course. We're going right back because the whole thing that we're trying to do here is link the big topics such as the training with the mindset. Is that I know a lot of people, especially like myself, is that once you get into the groove, that's not necessarily the dying parts of prep, we'll say, as in the last 2 to 3 weeks, but when you're in that, we'll say 10 to 3 weeks out or whatever, you're going to feel good in a sense. You're going to look really good. So being at the gym is going to be a happy place for you. So,
right.
So I will, if time permits, go to the gym more. You know what I mean? So I will give them that because then they'll want to go. They'll be so happy to be there, even if they do some of the selfies in the mirror, whatever. I don't really care. Even just let's say the people at the gym are positive towards them or whatever. Go to the gym, and that's when we as coaches can definitely work the training in an odd way around their enjoyment of being at the gym. Now, I'm not saying that I'm going to make a program super different for them, but I am going to say something like, okay, we will get you to do more of that circuit training, or I'll get you to do your abs at the gym instead of at home, because then they are going to give it more, or something like that, because then that is in that maybe that extra 30-50 calories that they're burning because they're more pumped up that they're at the gym. 50 times 7, that adds up. Extra 350 calories, that adds up. And we're talking muscle retention here, so that could be doing it as well. So I want to bring up too, you made me think of a very famous, in my opinion, it's probably not famous, but Dante Trudell was talking about how he not only paid attention to himself, but to pay attention to his guys of doing diet versus doing the cardio. And this was for the big guys. This is for the bigger gentlemen, is that he noticed a massive difference, or at least we'll say significant, we'll use scientific term significant difference in leg size come show day with overdoing cardio, even less cardio, versus having the food come from the diet. So there is going to be at a point where maybe we should start for the training, because I know it's not necessarily training, but at least from the cardio aspect, back off on the cardio and use more dietary tactics to do it, as opposed to because you big boys out there, that body will start to atrophy. So even if you want to look at who has the best calves outside of the genetics, it's the bigger guys in the off season. And that was one of the weirder theories that I saw being tossed around, like as in how Lee Priest got these huge calves, how Ronnie Coleman got these huge calves. Outside of those guys usually had them anyway. But if you are, let's say your stage weight is 200. Let's say Ronnie was 200 on stage. What was that when he was like 14? So Ronnie was 200 on stage. But when he gets up to 300 pounds in that offseason, he's doing a single-legged 300-pound calf raise every step he takes. So where I'm going with that is that if you do it more and now all of a sudden now you're weighing that close to that 200 pounds, those legs aren't going to see that same kind of stimulus. So they're going to go, oh, okay, I don't need to do it anymore. I'm going to get rid of it. Especially if you think about how the human body even works, is that muscle is a very expensive, less calorie producing weight, whereas fat, 9 calories per gram, is lighter. Think about that in terms of a car. If we could get gasoline, let's say gasoline is muscle. Let's say I came along and I said, hey, I've got something that is lighter, that lasts more than 2 times as long, that I can put in your car to fuel it. What would you pick? And that's the fat. That's why it's called. Yeah. That's why we don't have stored body muscle. We have stored body fat. So you are going to have to do everything you can, scientifically, training wise, smart wise, to get that muscle to hang around. It is use it or lose it. If you do not need it, aka from the training stimulus, aka from the correct diet, it will go the F away. So having all kind of those play into one, that's something you can get into your mind frame too and say, okay, my body definitely does not want to keep this shit hanging around. I had better give it everything, which is going to be my last point before I give it back to you, is that I really like that you said that you will keep one lift, at least one compound in there. That'll be my C level. That'll be my barometer. Like, let's say I know that my girl loves training leg press and she can do 6 plates for about 10 to 15 in the off season. So let's say that keeps there pretty good. You know, I keep her when she's fresh off the boat, first goes in, warms up, and I keep that leg press rate at the very beginning. And let's say it's still at that 5 to 6, cool, 4 to 5K, cool. Then now maybe we get something. I'm giving it a little bit extreme here. Let's say the weight goes down to half. That's when I might start thinking it's time to look into something like refeeds or something like that. If that one compound, that one thing that I know that they like and that they can give it on, if that starts to really wane on me, that's when I might say, okay, I either need to back off on the training volume, or maybe I do need to take a look into, especially then again, we could talk an entire episode about what to do when you plateau, but I'm not going to get into it. But that's when you can really start looking, go, okay, maybe the training does need to change a little bit, because let's say she's so burnt out from the back day before that now she can't give it on that leg press. So there could be a host of things there, but I really like that you said that you have at least one compound that's not just some kind of pump fluff training, that you can kind of go, okay, here is where my strength is at for that body part.
Yep. And it's funny you talked about, I'm like complete opposite, that my legs are really good and that I can just destroy them. I mean, they might shrink up a little bit, but I can afford it.
Yeah.
So
yep.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, that's another thing, prioritizing not just how you're going to burn the calories in recovery, but also how it's going to affect the way you look, because ultimately that's the goal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially for, I mean, anyone really. And I would think especially a class like bikini, for example. I mean, the last thing I want is glutes that have atrophied like crazy and you can't get them to fill back out, and you have like a saggy underbutt.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So you go into that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean that's just it. It's once that muscle atrophies, because I mean the glutes are such a big muscle that it will be hard to produce that look on stage. I mean, um, ideally, I think in figure also, in figure and bikini, having that a good solid glute ham tie-in, which part of that's just being lean, obviously. But secondly, having that and having muscle there, I always tell girls, hey, if your glutes aren't that big in the off season, they're not going to be ready for stage. Because
Absolutely.
they're going to get smaller. I mean, they're going to get smaller. So if you're walking around and you don't have a huge ass in the off season for a bikini girl, then well, it's just not going to be where it needs to be on stage, most likely.
Correct. And I'll take that even a step further is that depending upon where they house body fat, I have seen girls with, we'll say, a cosmetically, shapely, looking in their yoga pants, great glutes, but then come, we'll call it diet time, prep time, then all of a sudden it's one of the first places to go in a sense, and they'll go, what happened to my butt? And then that's another thing I can look at and go, how is those flying backwards kickbacks all you're doing? Is that really, is that really working, or like show like not
Yep.
that, no, again, I will disclaimer, I did change my opinions on these. I used to think that you could build everything you needed from squats, lunges, deadlifts, until I've seen some girls with really crappy activation that do need some of these. We'll call them the fluffy exercises. I'm allowed to call them fluffy because I do them. But if that's all you're doing, your
Right.
nice big off season bikini ass could go away. It's just like guys with anything. Let's say they just don't hold a lot of fat in their biceps, or they hold it in a good way in their bicep, and now all of a sudden it becomes a nocep. So definitely, I agree with you there. You got to be doing something there. I also want to touch on one more thing here before we jump into the last week stuff. Excuse me. Is that I really like to ask the client, like, or if I don't already know, what training and or style and or exercises do you really like? Because as we know, I wrote an article called "Training in the Need State." Is that sometimes we do, and actually usually more than often not, we need to train in a little bit different style than what we're used to and what we like to get that extra new growth. For like, let's say for instance, if you have been training in the 8 to 12 rep range, 3 sets, you've been doing the bro split, the chest day, back day, you should try something the heck different, because not only you will hopefully maybe get bored of being set in your ways there, B, you might get some new growth from, let's say, doing a different rep range or whatever, and then C, which is what I like for contest prep, is that you'll come back to it and you'll really enjoy it again. So if I like ask let's say I got a classic physique guy and I know he loves doing incline flies, I know that he loves doing that, I might give him at, let's say, 8 weeks, 10 weeks out, I might give him a plethora of all the shit he loves, just so that now that's an extra boost, so that when he goes there, it's not, oh, I got to do this again. No, it's, yeah, this is my jam. So that's another way to passively pump up the training in a way that not only will we get the maximum out of the workout, but we'll get the maximum out of the client.
Sure. Yeah, and that's going to be one instance where, well, I mean, there's multiple instances of this, but that'll be an instance where just sticking to what you like, because like I said, you're not really building tissue at that point. You're not building muscle. So do what you like, because if that gives you a little bit of extra motivation in the gym to have a more productive session, you're probably going to hold more muscle.
Correct.
That's just it.
Correct. And then that's also going to set up post contest too, because then the mind frame is good going in. They haven't been doing something they hate for a while, plus the diet. Absolutely.
I'm not going to argue with that. So how about we touch on training during the final week before the show. I mean, there's a couple, in my eyes, there's a couple main goals with this, depending on the person. Clearing inflammation, that's going to be a big one.
Yep.
We don't want soreness. You shouldn't have soreness lingering from your workouts going into a show. That's going to cause inflammation and retention within the muscle. It won't look as separated, striated, what have you. Because
That's right.
I mean, some people that you get those you get a huge pump sometimes, and you actually lose definition. That's kind of a similar effect.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then secondly, you could say, uh, I guess, just giving your CNS a break, but I mean, I guess it probably doesn't. In reality, it doesn't much matter at that
Yeah,
point.
right. I get what you're saying. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, clearing inflammation is going to be the main one. Then obviously preventing injury and things of that nature. And because you should be pretty much in shape at this point, obviously.
Correct.
And you'll find that, I mean, with most people, find that if done right in the right time frame, backing off cardio, backing off training, they normally, I mean, a lot of people actually lose weight, lose more weight, and look leaner because of that inflammation primarily.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I mean, that is obviously, like I said, that's the main goal of doing that. People always ask, hey, when do you stop training legs before the show? Because
Correct. Yep.
we'll look at a good way to look at it is go from biggest muscle group to smallest muscle group when you're training before the
Mm-hmm.
show, just
Mm-hmm.
because biggest is obviously going to have the most capacity for inflammation and retention. So go big to small. If you want to do, you know, I'll normally do something like legs, yeah, a week out, something
Right.
like that. And that might depend on their cardio too, like how beat up are their legs. But I probably wouldn't have them stop much before that. I mean, I've seen people that say, "Oh, I stopped training legs 2 weeks out from the show." I'm like, yeah, that's kind of
Oh
ridiculous.
wow, that's
But
a little excessive. I don't think I've heard that, but that's crazy. Okay.
yeah, so be reasonable with it. In a week, you're probably still gonna have a little bit of cardio in there. Your legs are still gonna have blood flow to them. There's still gonna be blood flow to the tissue. Let them recover fully, because if you want to get real sciencey on it, if you look at actual inflammatory markers like on lab work, if you look at um, markers of training inflammation, so you would see certain things elevated, like, well, liver enzymes are always elevated, creatine kinase levels are elevated.
Mm-hmm.
There's multiple things that are going to be elevated. So if you look at literature, how long does it actually take for those things to go down? Well, it's not a day. It's not 2 days normally.
No, that's
Normally,
right.
it's multiple days. So if you want to look at it kind of from a sciencey standpoint, I mean, personally, I want to have as much inflammation cleared as I can and because I mean, I could see drastic differences in some people when you get that inflammation out. I mean, they look like they lose, an extra 2% of body fat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I'm at. Like I said, I'll go big to small. I'll normally keep it everything. If you want to use, whatever scale of intensity you use, if you use an RPE scale or whatever you like, it'll be maybe a 6 to 7 at most out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of, so it's basically coasting. You're getting blood to the tissue, which in this situation is probably actually going to help it recover even better
Mm-hmm.
and not damage it more, because you're probably, your load, the amount of weight you're using, is probably gone down at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not really much tissue damage. Muscle recovers, inflammation clears out, you're good to go. I would say my volume in a normal situation, the volume might be 75% of what it was
Mm-hmm.
previously. So that's kind of the gist of it.
Okay.
I mean, there's other, like, the time frame of how I back things off and how I pull cardio out will kind of depend on the person, though.
Yeah, cardio. I would almost venture to say that would be what do we do dietary wise, in a sense. Like, yes, I guess you could call some forms of cardio training, but yeah, that's more of a how do I diet them the last week for sure.
So yeah, I mean, that's the basic gist of where I'm at with it. I mean, like I said, it's relatively straightforward in that sense, just because I don't want to do anything risky. I'm okay with also pulling out a lot of multi-joint movements that risk injury as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that at that point. A week out, I don't care. You're not going to lose muscle. So, I will, if somebody's really beat up, I might get rid of a squat. I might just have them leg press.
Sure. Yeah.
So anything like that, don't in the last week. Like I said, clear information, be safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah, good. I like that. So I will start out by saying I fell in just from paying attention to the wrong, we'll say, coaches and other modalities such as magazines or something. Is that I did have people do the depletion workouts, which I wanted to touch on anyway. So yeah, I did have them do that, where the last even week that the workouts did change both not only exercises but rep range to the 15 to 25 pumping depletion, because that actually came from the original studies when they were trying to put people into a glycogen supercompensation mode, like we talked about on the last podcast, where people would try to get everything out to make their body more sensitive to ram everything in. And that was also the methodology about why people would do this now before a bodybuilding show, because they wanted to maximize the potential for glycogen supercompensation and reuptake and cell volumization and all that kind of fun stuff. And it worked. We'll say, and I'll use air quotes here, but it didn't work anything better or anything special. I will say that. So I kind of ditched that in front of, and upon talking to some of my peers that I respect and talking to others, I found out that it's not only that, but then now I'm giving the client something to worry about, in a sense. Excuse me, something to worry about. That's something that's new. It's something that's different. Something that's a variable. And as you know, for the last week, that's the last thing we want, is any kind of variables. So I always like to govern with Dorian Yates in his excellent quote, which was, I'm paraphrasing him here, and this is as if he was saying it. I wouldn't change anything about my contest prep except for the last couple weeks. I really wish I would have backed off a little bit. And I've kind of let that guide me in a sense, and I really like that. So he keeps the workouts the same, but he wishes he just would have backed off on the weight, because like you said, there's no new tissue being built here. There's no PRs being built here. This is no time to be a hero. So I do keep the workouts the same. I do follow exactly like you said in terms of the legs. I like to keep it around that Sunday before would be the last day, if it was in their rotation, that they're going to do it. I like to back off of the intensity too. I like that 75% gauge as it. If for some strange reason I did have a big amount of compounds in, I might take them out. Or let's say I was doing a lot of dumbbells. Let's say I had dumbbell incline press, dumbbell flat press, and dumbbell flies or something. Maybe I'd put them on a cable fly just to have it be a little bit more secure, something like that. I will dip in and I'll say I make a cardio switch, in a sense of I cut out I do. I cut out sometimes stepper. From people's, if I know they're doing a lot of volume of stepper, I will cut the stepper out to give the legs a chance to recover. Because just because you're taking your leg training early in the week, if you do stepper on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and potentially Thursday, you're not fully getting rid of the inflammation in the legs now, because now it's seeing a mic, like, as I like to try to tell people to put everything in terms of what if it was a weight training. So that's like, what we'll say 300 single-legged individual lunges. That's still putting too much stress on the legs, so I like to switch it to something like either elliptical or a treadmill, and then I will get rid of the hit as much as I can too, because at this point there is, like you said, like I love how you kept hammering home inflammation, and that is the whole thing. But if I do hit, which now the CNS is going to still be taking a smacking around, but now the legs aren't going to be recovering as much at all. And so that's pretty much about it, is that I get rid of that inflammation. Like you said, I don't change the training. And I just let everything kind of be smooth sailing from that point on. I don't think anything super magic should be changed. And yeah, that's kind of it.
I like that you mentioned the depletion workouts. I didn't really say anything about them because I don't really ever use them, just because, if you're not insulin sensitive at that point and depleted, then, well, you're probably not that lean.
You got it.
Because I mean, when you look at those studies, I'd have to go back and look because I haven't referenced them in a long time. But I would say it's probably safe to assume that the individuals they were doing the studies on weren't in contest shape.
Exactly. A, weren't in contest shape. B, what couldn't move what seasoned bodybuilders or even seasoned figure girls could move for a weight. Like, yeah, it's just, you know what I mean? So the glycogen depletion of, let's say, even banging out, let's say the end of the prep, you banging out some 2-plate squat, that's way different than someone jumping on the leg extension for 80 pounds and cranking out 30 reps a bunch. We're still going to get that depletion for sure. No, that, but the whole frigging prep was a massive depletion in a sense, right?
Oh yeah, that's it. The whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing might be is that if someone needs a little extra push, and this is more of the nutrition thing, and they're normally, I'm like, I could maybe have you refeed at this 5-day out point. I'm like, I'm gonna wait.
Yeah, exactly. If your scheduled
So
refeed is at X,
right,
push X a couple days ahead. Yeah, or behind.
right,
Yep, you got it.
yep, yeah. So outside of that, I mean, you're gonna be depleted. There's really no need to do anything else at that point.
No, and I love too. I wanted the last thing how you said about the inflammation. Can take like the 1 to 2 days before they see it back. That's also more than likely assuming that they're not doing more training. Just because I say this to people all the time too, because just because you trained legs doesn't mean they're going to recover in, let's say, 2 days, especially if you go in and train the chest tank. Like, you just because you wipe the leg tank and now the we'll say calories, I wanted to use a different term, we'll say those are the calories that your body would be using to put towards the leg recovery. Well, if you still got to go train chest, shoulders, back, arms, now you're not going to have every single calorie going towards your leg recovery and fluffing out the inflammation. So that 1 to 2 days could be 3 to 4 days. And that's why, in general, we as decent and smart-minded prep coaches like to put the legs so far back is that they're huge. Like, I always, I don't say they're half their body. I say that's 2/3 of the body. So you are going to be using resources with the other training that could be going towards the facilitation of the inflammation buffering. So that is a really good reason to not want to go way too over the top as well, because you still are, even though the legs are done on Sunday and you're training Monday, Tuesday, you still are taking away from the maximal recovery. And that's why I think like the whole training right up until the day of the show, which I've seen, come on now, like it's just, if you've been doing it right, that's just silly, period.
Yep, I can't argue with any of that.
Okay, man. Well, I think that was a pretty darn good dive into training, the modalities, the mentalities behind the prep life, we'll call it.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, guys, there's some major takeaways in there. We kind of, if you go back through and listen, we kind of reiterated on certain points. If we said something multiple times, it's probably pretty important.
That's exactly. That's what I'm pretty, we'll say, famous locally that I'll be old dad Marty be like, didn't you already say that? I'm like, I know, because I wanted to stick in your freaking head. But I will definitely in closing say for post show stuff, well, because we could go way into this, but I'm just going to very briefly say that when you do get back into the gym after the post show, don't go right back to that 100% either, because everything is going to be a little bit shocked. Definitely if you did some kind of water depletion, whatever, things aren't going to be on full tilt recovery, because your body's still, even after the show, even after, let's say you stop training on the Wednesday, on the Thursday before the show, and you go back to the gym on the Monday or whatever, that's still not a lot of friggin' time. Your body is still recovering lots of other processes, not just going, right to the muscles. The CNS is probably still not there, especially if you haven't been sleeping on the show weekend or so. So when you do, and if you do go back into the gym, I always like to give people the same program that they did, because it's familiar, and just back off on the weight. Because if you want to start something brand new, fire up that next week right after the gym and go in, that is, in my opinion, just not the time, man. You just pick a little bit higher of a rep range. There's still to get the dust off of them. Yes, I know you did work out last week. Yes, I know you did have probably a lot of food on the weekend or whatever, but it's not worth it to jump into the gym on the Monday and go blast some brand new wacky 5x5 max strength hybrid dog crap training. It's not worth it.
No, it's not. And it's not, I mean, you're basically at that point, I'm just trying to ride that super compensation effect with people.
Exactly.
That's it. And that might mean, okay, they do a little bit more than the previous week. Like you said, add reps or something, because you're going to have a little bit extra glycogen. You should have been loaded for the show, so you were already full, plus you ate after the show. So now you're really full and maybe potentially starting to spill over. So you can burn through some of that glycogen, let things balance out, and you're going to fill out like an SOB for, you should, all week.
For sure.
Easy.
Yeah, and all of that, but like to really hammer home and get the water, definitely get the water, get the electrolytes back up, and just go in and just keep crushing the water so that the full and dry muscles now become full and hydrated muscles with hydration for the stomach, with hydration for, we'll say, just existing. So because like cramping up is, I've heard it way too much too on those next weeks of training. Is just no, get everything back in balance. This is even give me, let's say Monday, Tuesday, give me lollygag training or whatever. Go in, get that pump, feel that wicked a cosmetic effect in the mirror, and then you can look into, let's say, really giving it. But just hold on, it'll come. The whopping strength will come.
I love that. It's like so full and pumped that I get a pump brush in my teeth.
Yeah, exactly, right? Forearms just jacked up like you're Frank McGrath in front of the mirror, right?
Yep. I posted that. I always post that after my show. You got like a week of really good photos where you're kind of watery, like, but you're not really you might not even be showing your abs in the photos. You're just like showing you're in a tank top and you just look like ridiculous.
Go out and buy. Here's Marty and Austin's mega bonus tip: is go out and buy 10 to 20 tank tops. Take. I don't care if it's in the same spot, but just put on the different tank tops so it looks like it's a different day. And now you got selfies for the next 12 weeks pre-planned. So you'd be like, "Yo, man, just train arms today. Oh yeah, bro, new tank top. Yeah, I just got it yesterday. Now I got those stocked up on the weekend of the show."
You can post it. You can post them all year.
That's right. You got yourself set up on automatic posts for the year. Okay.
Awesome.
From Marty and Austin here at the Mind Body Broadcast. Thanks for listening, and we will see you on the next show.
See you guys.